You have all told us in your introduction whether you were enlisted or if you were drafted. But could you expand on that a little bit? If you were enlisted, what were the reasoning why you enlisted, why you felt that you need to enlist? Or if you were drafted, what was your initial reaction to that? Whoever wants to start.
I was enlisted. As I told Marla, I said I started out going to college. All I cared about was playing football and being a young kid at that age. So I went to Wayne State. I decided to quit football and then decided that school wasn't going to be for me anymore because I didn't care for it, I guess, at the time. So it's kind of interesting that I quit at the end of the semester, come back, work for my dad for a little bit. Summertime, decided to join the Air Force just because I had some family members who were in the Air Force. They actually retired out of the Air Force, and I knew the Air Force was the best branch to go into. No, I knew it was the easier branch. And I wanted to be in the medical field for some reason. When I went to college, I wanted to be in sports medicine. I wanted to be an athletic trainer, so I still had that medical part in me. So I delayed enlist in like early summer and for the medical field. Luckily, when I was in high school, me and a buddy, we took the ASVAB test. It's kind of the ACT kind of test for the military you have to take. Luckily, we did that in high school, so that test score was still good. I didn't have to retake it or anything, and I just went to the recruiter and ran on one day and signed the line and come home and told Mom and Dad that I joined the Air Force, and they were good with that. I mean, my dad always told me that's where I needed to go. Evidently, he thought I needed to grow up a little bit. So yeah, I knew I wanted to do that. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field, and so I delayed enlist, and they kept calling every other week and say, hey, we have this job opening, you could be a mechanic today or a truck driver, you can leave today. And I said, no, I'm waiting for the medical, that's what I enlisted for. So finally in December that year is when I went to basic training, so I was delayed enlist for quite a while. But that's really, I knew it was a place that I could go and learn something, and actually it helped me out. That's what the career was when I came back out of the Air Force, is what I still do today almost. And so it's basically just I wasn't mature enough to handle college, and I knew I could get paid and learn a trade and get money for college after that. So it was kind of one of those spurring moments that it's time to go somewhere instead of wasting my mom and dad's money.
Well,
You bring up a good point about when I joined the Army. After I committed to the Army, I had a good friend who was in the Air Force. So, I mean, not had, he's still a good friend. And he said, Monty, you joined the wrong branch. I go, no, I really like Army. He goes, no, you don't understand. When you get about 15 years in service, they're going to say, you're going to tell yourself, boy, I wish I would have joined the Air Force. And guess what? When I started seeing all those big, cool airplanes and having a chance that I could have, possibly been a pilot, I had a big interest in that. So, yeah, he was right. I wish I would have joined the Air Force so I could fly big, giant airplanes and have a wonderful time. But by that time, I was fully committed in the Army, so I wanted to change anyway. But he was right. So you're right. I agree. The Air Force is a pretty cool organization.
I shared with Trent yesterday that he asked me that initial question about enlisting or being drafted. Well, I was drafted after 2 years of college, just right at the beginning of the Vietnam War. And rather than go with the draft, I saw some better opportunities with the Air Force, so I enlisted. And enlisted in the Air National Guard, actually, but then spent most of my time, actually all of my time, in the regular Air Force. So it was a great experience. A lot of, especially having a couple of years of college ahead of time. I shared with Trent that it gave me an opportunity to learn to be a leader to kids that were just coming out of high school, and for whatever reason they thought I was a leader. So I had some good times with the boys. It was a good experience.
I enlisted. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Ladies first.
Oh, well, thank you. I enlisted. I've been teaching at Wood River for 6 years, and had already finished my master's in education. And was a little frustrated, felt like I wanted to see something besides the cornfields of Nebraska. So I just kind of, I went and talked to a recruiter. First mistake, because they're very persuasive, and he told me that I would be eligible for officer training, and so I looked into it and applied and was accepted. And on my application, because I had already been involved in teaching, I put education and training, administrative work, or personnel. And unfortunately, I got the letter back saying that I had been accepted, except it said your job assignment will be that of a weapons controller. And I kind of looked at that and said, what? What is a weapons controller? And of course, the recruiter informed me, and he said, well, don't worry though, you can get that changed once you get down there. Not. But I think because I had already been teaching, you know, of course, they don't draft women, but, you know, I think it's something that maybe eventually they may look at. But I enlisted and chose the Air Force because I wanted to wear my Air Force blues. I loved the blue uniform and had a lot of respect for anybody in the military, I guess, but preferred the Air Force. So some of the other things that I learned will come out later, I'm sure. So they'll turn out to art.
Well, I enlisted. I quit school in freshman year in high school. And my older brothers, I were farming, and I got kind of tired of going and working on the farm for nothing. Milking cows at 6 o'clock in the morning and 4 or 5 at night. And so I decided to, besides getting in trouble all the time, so I decided, my sister married an ex-sailor when he got out. She got married to a guy that was pretty much fun when you got to thinking about it, but he pretty much told me that the Navy was a place to go, so I looked at the Air Force, and I kind of liked it, and I would have tried it, but I decided the Navy, and when I told my mom that it really enlisted when I was 16 years old, and they wouldn't take me, of course, until my mother signed, and I couldn't sign until I was 17, so I had to wait about 6 months before I could get going, but when she finally signed it, why, I got on the train in Billings, Montana, and we went right to the coast, and we got up to the coast in Oregon, and I looked out there when I got up that morning out of the sleeper, and I seen all that water, and I said, man, what the hell did you do? But I held it. The conductor told me, he said, don't worry about it, you'll be in love with it before it's all said and done. So, and anyway, I went to boot camp in San Diego, and I got out. My first ship was a light cruiser. We had, it was pretty big, and it was something that when you got out there on the ocean, when we first went overseas, why, I still shook my head and said, man, oh man, what you doing here? But got through that. Then I was due to get out of the Navy in 1950. I was enlisted for 3 years. So, but Korea decided that they wanted to cause some problems. So in August of 50, I was to get out in November. August of 50, why President Truman wrote me a letter. He decided that they needed me for a little while. So I stayed for a month without, and I decided, well, why am I doing this for nothing? So I re-enlisted. And I re-enlisted for 4 years, and I was going to make a career of it. And we was going overseas all the time. We would spend 3 months over, we'd come back, spend 3 months in the States, go back for 6, come back for 3, aboard the ship. So decided I didn't want to do that either, so I was going to go and be a pilot. So I got out of the Navy, went to work in a telephone office in Helena, Montana, and I just got fed up with that too, I guess. And so I went down to the Air Force recruiter, and boy, they blow hard over there. There's some blowhards that can tell you a lot of things, and if they come true, it's a wonder. So anyway, I enlisted in the Air Force. I went to Denver, Colorado, and went to school there in A5 and M1 armament, and that was for 3 months. Then they shipped me to Columbus, Ohio. I went to Columbus, Ohio, was there for 1.5 years, and ended up in Lincoln, Nebraska. And it's too much. Then Eisenhower got in as president, and he was cutting the armed services, so I decided that was pretty good for me, and I took a hardship discharge and got out. And here I am. And my treasures that I got, you might say, from Nebraska, is I got a wonderful wife from Aurora, Nebraska. And her name was Betty Newland, and she worked at the telephone company for 51 years, and she just retired last April, so that's my story. And I'm sticking to it.
Well, I guess that, kind of look at time frames. I graduated from high school in '68, and Vietnam was a going business then, but it was actually on the downhill side. So I really felt like I needed to do something. So I got on board then, and I did a number of different things. One of the consequences of the end of the war was that we had a number of prisoners, U.S. prisoners in Vietnam, and they had to be brought back to the States either to be adjudicated or to finish a sentence. So I got involved with that, and it was kind of interesting. There were people that probably had no reason to be in lockup, and other people that, you know, you'd kind of like to keep them in a cage. So there was really a mixture there. And following on then, I worked in aircraft maintenance. Eventually, I just ran out of steam and I separated. And then in 1983, I joined the Air Guard. In 1984, in the fall, I decided it really wasn't doing much for me, so I started to tell the supervisor that I was just going to go ahead and separate because I didn't have an obligation. And he asked me if I'd do a 45-day project for him if I had time, and you know, why not? And 24 and a half years later, I walked out the door, and I don't think it was quite done.
Government work, huh?
Just an unbelievable variety of experiences. Went from fighter type aircraft to tankers, and we worked around the world. And talking about interrelationship with other services, a lot of what we did was to haul people. Unfortunately, there were memorial flights where we had our service members that had been killed in action. We provided a lot of fuel for people hauling in and hauling out materials. And while at that point we weren't on the ground in the combat areas, we were neighboring, and our guys spent a lot of time over hostile territory, either refueling tankers, bombers, other transports. And so it became really important to ensure that